If you thought race was tough when you were choosing it, because there were so many options, I can see in the dark. I can climb walls. Why not go with those? Classes offer so many more things.
Guys, this is one of my favorite parts. You actually get your app or your paper and really start laying rubber to the road. There are so many classes, subclasses in the various books, from Player's Handbook to Xanathar's to some of the new stuff Critical Role's put out. Amazing things. So many different paths, so many different options, so many different subclasses. We're going to get into it today.
Class.
And subclasses.
There's so many options, but you have built your personality. You have built your concept. Something must apply here.
Your backstory, your background alone should speak to what you're going to pick. I got into Fighter a little bit off camera and realized none of the martial archetypes match my character. Fighter fits the story, so now it's time to multi-class.
So you're going to stay inside the realm of the PHB?
Oh, yeah, Player's Handbook is great. It's free. It's on D&D Beyond. Anybody getting into the game can start with this book and have many classes and subclasses to choose from.
The player's handbook is free on D&D Beyond?
Surprisingly enough, it is.
Wow, I didn't even know that. I'm going to go third party.
This is where experience comes in.
The reason I'm going to go third party is because I'm shooting for a noblesque type character for Aswold. I've got a couple pulled up that I'm looking through right now, but I don't even know what I'm going to pick yet.
A homebrew is another term you'll hear for this. This is something that should come up very early in your discussions with the game and your DM, and be really hammered in session zero. Not all tables allow homebrew. Some tables are homebrew only. You really want to be careful to make sure that you're not going to outshine, outperform, or ostracize anyone at the table. A lot of these, I say a lot, some of these homebrew classes can be very powerful,
Yes,
OP even.
some third party avenues are just plain broken. But the direction that I'm headed in, I don't even think they could break the class, to be honest.
Interesting. Why not?
Well, I'm shooting for a noble or an aristocrat, and both of those seem to be a bit mundane. I know the direction that I want Aswold to take, but let's talk about your direction.
So I got into fighter. I knew I wanted to be a fighter because I was too thin, too weak to be the orc barbarian, only being a half race. So fighter fit the bill. It's fine. I took defense as my fighting style, and then when I got into the archetypes, samurai was definitely not going to be it. Eldritch
No?
Knight, no, no. Um, so I really didn't see any of those fitting my character, who I'm toying around with the idea of Chevy for the name. So we'll use that this episode. Uh, Chevy is not a battle master. He was never skilled enough to lead uh, the raiding parties. So this is where I think I'm going to finish off with fighter and move into bard. As I said, shy bard, but you don't have to go straight at it all the time. You can take a level or two in your backstory that makes sense with your backstory, and then move into who your character wants to be in this world, and then apply that.
If you have a personality archetype or a concept that's already built out and you're ready to choose your class, we would love to hear about it in the comments below.
Absolutely.
And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. With Aswold, I'm thinking I'm gonna go aristocrat. It gives me that purpose for where he comes from. He comes from a bit of nobility, but he has been removed from that because he has been shunned by his family. It's a similar line to the original character, but in this distinction, Aswold will be struggling a lot with whether or not he's good or whether he's evil. And he will go into the development of that character through play and discover that about himself along the way.
All right, so questions on my mind, I'm sure some of yours. Marshall, caster, half caster, what are we looking at here?
Yeah, no caster yet.
No?
No,
Okay.
I'm thinking. I found something that's really interesting.
Sure.
It's an ex aristocrat,
Mm-hmm.
and I wanted to look that up and see exactly what that was all about. But the aristocrat, as a general thing, gets several class features along the way that are interesting. One of those being manservant. You actually get a henchman of sorts to
We'll call
come
this
around
a
with you.
seen servant
Scene servant?
as opposed to an unseen servant spell.
Oh,
Come on,
I
this
got
guy.
all that. Yeah. Okay. Um, High standards. They surprisingly get light, medium, and heavy armors for weapons and armor proficiencies. That doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, but maybe it's
Paul
built into their
Atreides
background.
was nobility, but he was also trained in many forms of combat.
There's old money, new money. That's
Mm.
interesting. Um, and then as you get further in the class build, you get abilities with etiquette, which I think focus around diplomacy or intimidate, depending on which alignment you choose.
So this is definitely going to be, or what could be, the voice of the party.
Definitely the voice of the party. But the way that I'm going to play Aswold in my head is that in the background, he will be making maneuvers and movement um, unbeknownst to probably his party members. Is that going to be shady? Yeah. Could that risk some trust issues within the party?
Mm.
Definitely if he gets called out to it. But that's where it's going to come into me talking with my DM about the session that we're going to play.
So for a new player like myself, would you consider this support?
The class that I'm
The
choosing,
role?
yeah, for Aswald as
Yes.
the
Yeah.
character, he could be a support character. It's a possibility as a support character. Um, I'm viewing him more as a.
I ask because this doesn't, to me, fit in a glass
It definitely does not
that
fit
I've
in a
seen so
glass.
far.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. He's going to be more of a hidden general, a mover of the pieces in the background kind of character. And he will have to choose whether or not that affects his teammates.
I'm excited.
There's a lot to the character, I know, but that's the class that I'm leaning toward, either noble or aristocrat. And that's based on the personality of the character. So going back to your personality and how you've developed your concept, you would choose your class based on that. How we've done it here. A lot of people start making up the background of the character and the story of the character after they've chosen stats and class and race. They build the character out from a D&D Beyond perspective or a character sheet perspective, and then they write the story. That's not the way we do it at RPU.
So let's quickly talk about running a class through to the end of the campaign versus multi-classing and even what some people call the skill monkey.
You're talking about Skill Monkey, you're talking about a jack of all trades kind of character. You're talking about going from 1 to 20 levels in the same class. And you're talking about multi-classing. What are the differences between the three? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, so when I first started playing D&D, before I ever got in my first game, I was a little nervous about multi-classing because I didn't know if it was going to hurt me or weaken my character if I was surrounded by adventurers that took one class all the way through.
So we're talking about a build of strength in all three of these categories. So let me address one piece to this. If you're going to start your campaign at a level 6, you're building a character for session 0 to talk with your DM, and they are already at level 6. All of those levels prior to that should fit into that background and that personality choice. You should build it apropos to that. If you're starting at level 1, the campaign itself and the journey that you take will dictate what you do when you make it to another level. Whether you stick with that class, whether you like, oh, it's time to multi-class based on what happened.
Are there any weaknesses or cons to doing one of the three? Say you take a level in rogue, a level in cleric, and a level in paladin. Are there downsides to throwing levels in different classes? Are you going to be at a disadvantage to the person to your left of you at the table that is straight paladin?
In some respects, you would be. Absolutely, there would be disadvantages because you're going to miss out on those opportunities of class features that you would normally get in a specific class. If you're looking toward the balance of the party, that's definitely a consideration that you want to make. But if you're staying true to the character, then you got to do what you got to do.
Fair enough.
From a skill perspective, if you're going to go that route and you're going to do a jack of all trades and rely highly on your skills, you really want to be proficient in as many as you can possibly be. That's how you're going to be playing your character at the table. I don't know how effective you're going to be in combat, if that's a factor for you.
Well, combat is, I think, one of the three pillars of the game:
Sure.
combat, exploration, and roleplay.
Combat, exploration, and roleplay. I can see that, but I feel like roleplay is an overarching. I feel like you can roleplay through combat.
There is that,
I feel like you can roleplay any scenario, any encounter, puzzle,
right?
negotiation,
Sure.
diplomacy, combat, journey. I feel like roleplay here at Roleplay University accounts for everything.
I like it.
So I'm thinking about with Aswold, how do I apply what I want to apply? Based on his background, he's going to be at a young age kicked out of the family, but he's still a part of the family. That's where aristocrat comes in at. He's still a part of it. Now, in a class sense, he gets traits with that class.
Mm-hmm.
He gets features. Do they have to be the way they're written? No, I don't think they do. I think I can flavor them in a different way. So, to summarize what I'm talking about, he gets 3 features at first level of aristocrat. He can't stay at aristocrat, he's not in the family any longer.
Makes
He's got to
sense.
go someplace else. I'm
Makes sense.
thinking that he's going to go rogue. And there's a good possibility that he's going to go Way of the Shadow Monk. And we'll get into that later. But for the first level aristocrat, he gets high standards, which grants him access to riches and high level armor and things like that. He gets old money, new money. Well, he has access to a lot of money in his family wings. Um, and he has manservant. So that means that he gets somebody to walk around and follow him. Scene servant. From the from the aspect of high standards, he has those because he's been studying his family from afar since he's been kicked out of it. He still has that nobility want and desire, but that doesn't mean that he has anything to show for it yet, except for his desires. And then old money, new money, he has a bank account with a lot of money in it. Lots and lots of gold, but he can't get access to it. Nobody even knows that he applies for heir to that income. And then the manservant aspect. He got kicked out of the family. They just discarded him like a piece of trash. But somebody else serving that family, they didn't like that. So they've stayed in contact with him along the way.
That's role playing at its best, man, that's gonna be fun.
It's what I hope for.
Yeah,
Then we're going to go into Rogue. We're going to go into a subclass of Rogue, and we'll get there. But I want to hear more about Chevy.
Chevy. So we took D&D Beyond on the phone and got to the point where we are working with class. There's a whole list. I'm going to fighter. Then I'll hit confirm. Now we have fighter, level 1.
He did that right here.
Yeah. Proficiencies. I think we're going to go with perception, right? He was always looking over his shoulder. Somebody was always coming to throw something at him, smack him in the back of the head. He learned to watch his back. I think perception fits that. The second, I think history. Nope, survival. Definitely survival. So, him being left at home while the entire village went raiding or went to war, he had to defend for himself. I think survival fits that pretty well.
Absolutely.
Now, for a fighting style, I get it level 1. I'm going to go with defense. He never got enough practice being on the offense, being the weaker half orc. So he learned to defend himself, to fend off. So with defense, I get a +1 to AC. I think that's going to work out well. I also get second wind. Um, Looking on, I think we'll take it to level 2 fighter. Um, Gives me an action surge, which is going to be great. I get another turn in combat. But after that, none of the martial archetypes really fit. He's not a champion. He's not a battle master. Definitely not an eldritch knight. So we're going to drop fighter at this point. Um,
And then we're going to go into
Bard.
and in the personality, in the background, in the structure of the character, why the shift now?
Now he is into an adventuring party or whatever the group may be that you're playing at the table with. Um, but now he's finally found people that believe in him, that will nurture and encourage him. Um, so he can explore his more creative side instead of it being destruction and blood and breaking bones. Um, so his friends tell him to give it a shot. And I think we'll eventually probably go into College of Swords just to have a subclass. Um, but we'll probably get into that a little further down.
Well, you'll probably get into that as you play the character.
Oh, absolutely.
So, a bit of a warning, our process is extremely useful, and you can see how it gets applied from the aspect of building upon what we talked about in episode 1 until now, and how we're fitting that mold. We're making the pieces come together. We're not choosing these classes and these subclasses because they're the best or they're the strongest. We're choosing them because they're true to the character and the way we want to play it. But we're talking about all these aspects of how they're built and the reasons behind them. And that would be written in your character description that you would hand to your DM at session 0. And that's the word of warning that I have. While I love it, and while Jared definitely loves it, in session 0, there is such a thing as TLDR. You don't want to hand your DM a 21-page description
Yep.
of your character because he's not going to read it or she's not going to read it. And if they don't, then you're not going to get what you want out of the session. So be realistic, but make sure you understand the flavor of the character because that's what's really going to help you.
So stay tuned for the next episode. And please like, subscribe, and join us next time at Roleplay University.